Hey guys, so we are back in this setup because the sun has gone down and I am using my very budget friendly lighting. Yes, it is probably the end of the first or second week of school for you, and for those of you who are in music school, you're probably finding that time management is key to surviving. I did go back and watch my first time management video because I didn't want to repeat anything I said in there. So if you guys are interested to see what I said there, please go check it out right here. I hate to tell people to not overcommit because the truth is that some people can handle heavier loads than other people can. Everybody's a little bit different and you need to find where your limit is. Keep in mind that just because someone else is overwhelmed by a certain amount of courses, rehearsals, exams, or whatever, you may actually find that you're okay with that load. That does not mean that you're better than the other person. It just means you're different. And if you're looking at someone else and they can go from practicing straight to their lesson, straight to another class, straight to a lab, another rehearsal, and then a concert, and they're nailing everything, and you feel bad about yourself, I really encourage you to not feel bad. You don't know how that person actually functions. There are people who, with their adrenaline, they can just go all day and then they crash the next day. Everyone is different in how they handle workloads. Having said that, everyone in school still needs to schedule some alone time so that you can get your studying done. Also, if you are a musician, I have noticed that most of us musicians are introverts at some level. We spend a lot of time by ourselves, you know, in the practice room and stuff like that. And if you can't survive in a practice room for hours on end, you're probably not going to end up in music school, you know? The average amount of hours you would be at music school per day is actually about 10. I know that sounds a lot, but it's the truth. If you spend that much time, you need to schedule some amount of time per week. You're just by yourself, you do your own thing. As introverts, we really need our alone time. Get your studying done during that time, recharge, you know, like don't spend all of that alone time practicing. I know that sounds really weird coming from a professional musician. You want to spend some time decompressing. Watch some Netflix, watch some YouTube, whatever helps you unwind, do that. At least an hour, couple times a week. Do not compromise this alone time. If people are asking you to go out for parties, if people are asking you to rehearse during that time, do not do it. Just tell them you're busy and you need to study. The only things that can override this are concerts, exams, and emergencies. If you end up saying yes to too many things that override your study/alone time, you will very quickly feel like things are unraveling, like too many things are happening at the same time. You need to have that time to regroup, recharge, and to review the material that you're learning at school. So yes, you can get involved in a lot of things, but do not compromise your scheduled alone time. When you're in school, your peers will often tell you that you're studying or practicing the wrong way, and then they'll go ahead and tell you what they think is the right way to practice or to study. And you may go into the practice room and try out their technique and it just does not work for you. And so a lot of times we end up feeling really bad about ourselves because we're like, well, it worked for them. Why isn't it working for me? And apparently that's the right thing to do. Now keep in mind what I said in my last video. We humans tend to see other people in our own shoes. And that's most likely what's happening in these cases. Your friend found this amazing new practice technique. It works for them. So if they're like, well, if it works for me, it must work for you. When in fact, that may not be the right way for you. So yes, you can go ahead and go into the practice room and see if it works for you, but if it doesn't work for you, find another way. Do not hammer your head trying to practice in a way that does not work for you. You're gonna end up wasting so much time doing that. Instead, if you find different ways to practice that works for you, you will find that you will go through your material, you will correct your mistakes, you will learn new material really quickly because you are learning in a way that works for your brain. Your girl here does surf the Reddits. Go to the subreddit LifeProTips. Lately, because it is the beginning of the school year, there are lots of back to school LifeProTips. There was one about Chrome extensions. One of the extensions actually helps you cite your web page if you're using it for research. Annotations and bibliographies just suck up the most time. If those Chrome extensions existed while I was in school, it would have made life so much easier and would have made my work go way faster. I think every single year around this time, there will be a lot of really good tips on that subreddit, so go check it out. Practice in order of importance. What do you need ready the soonest? So is there a specific solo that you need to have ready for a rehearsal later that day? Is there an etude that you need to have prepared by tomorrow for your teacher? Are there really tricky spots in your small ensemble music that you need to learn for your coaching session tomorrow? Figure out which things you need to present the soonest and order your music for your practice session in that way. You probably have noticed that if you crammed a practice session way too close on only one thing, literally right before you went to like a lesson or a coaching session or a rehearsal, you probably found that you ended up messing it up just completely, even though you already practiced it. And this is probably because your brain has not had enough time to process what you learned in your practice session. So it's always better if there's like a slight gap in time of your brain doing other things between when you corrected a mistake or learned a part in your practice session to when you need to present it for a rehearsal or a lesson or a coaching session. You can totally go from a practice session to a lesson, but you have to make sure that the stuff that you need really prepared goes first in your practice session so that your brain can have some time to process it. Let's say you're between classes and you only have like a tiny bit of time. Jump right in and practice the hardest bits of what you need to present the soonest. Only practice that and then just go to your next class. If you have a little bit more time, then add in a little bit of warm-up. If you have even more time, you do a warm-up, then you do all the hardest bits of your music. So this includes your repertoire, etudes, chamber ensemble music, orchestra music, band music, whatever. Anything that is the hardest, you do it at the beginning of your practice session. Then you can fill up the rest of your time with technique. And then if you have even more time, warm up, hardest bits, technique, and then you can play through your repertoire. I know it sounds crazy to put it at the end, but the thing is, why practice like crazy the easy parts of your repertoire when you don't have enough time? Chances are, whatever is the hardest bit in that repertoire, you probably already practiced at the beginning of your practice session, right? So you're really just sort of filling in the blanks and figuring out which parts have you overlooked. If you've overlooked some parts that are really hard, then maybe for your next practice session, you need to put it in with all the other hard, really difficult bits of music. You have more brain space to play with expression when your mind isn't just occupied with all of these like super hard bits that you need to practice. Then if you have even more time, so you warm up, do your hard bits, do your technique, you play through your repertoire, work on tone. I know most people work on it at the beginning, but I really feel like you waste so much time by doing that, because a lot of times people will end up only practicing tone and not have any time for anything else, which sucks, right? Because every time you go to a rehearsal and you go to a lesson, you sound like you're really unprepared, even though you may have been practicing for hours and hours, but most of those hours are probably only on tone. It's also a really good way to decompress and sort of like recharge from all of the craziness that you were working on for the rest of your practice session. And that way, you're not so worried about all this other stuff that you just practiced because you know that you already practiced it, right? Because your brain isn't so occupied, it will feel more free to explore. The desire to explore is one of the most important things about developing tone. If you want to develop tone, you need to want to experiment with your sound. And honey, trust me, you are not gonna want to experiment with your sound if your mind is just preoccupied with super difficult things that you know you need to learn and have not learned yet. So yeah, I hope that was helpful for you guys. Let me know if you have any more questions. Obviously, I have not talked about everything that you can talk about in terms of time management. Maybe I will make a third time management video in the future. And as usual, if you guys liked my video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. My last video is over there, and if you want to catch me during the week, my social media networks are down there. But otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Bye. Oh, my chicken soup is ready. Good to know. Good to know. Thank you, phone.